Hey everyone, you're listening to Party Time, My Golf Story with Kevin Walsh, and whatever special guest he has today, you can check me out on episode 9 of the podcast. Today I'm wearing Grayson clothes while I'm out practicing because I believe in look good, play good, and follow me on Instagram, Sophia Warren Golf, and hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
It's Party Time, My Golf Story, brought to you by Party Drinks. Classically designed golf drinks for golfers by golfers. And the golf real estate pros Gene Walsh and Vince Visicaro. For your Southwest Florida real estate needs, check them out at suncoastdreams.com. Now here's your host, Kevin Walsh.
Hey everyone, welcome to the program. This is part 2 of our interview with John Riley. He is the author of The Last Amateur, My Golf and Life, which is the autobiography of the late Jay Sigel. Who was Jay Sigel? He was the second coming of Bobby Jones. He was thought to be the next Jack Nicklaus until an unfortunate accident in which he put his hand through glass and hurt his hand so badly, had a lengthy surgery, 90 plus stitches and everything, long recovery, and then went on even after that to play some of the greatest golf in his life as an amateur, 2-time U.S. amateur champion back-to-back, won a British Amateur Championship, 3 mid-amateurs, 9-time Walker Cup captain, just absolutely golfing royalty. Big thanks to our title sponsor, Party Drinks. If you're looking for a drink alternative on the golf course, try a Party. For golfers, by golfers, and way better than those crappy seltzers that you've been drinking on the golf course. If you do not have Party at where you play golf, then get in touch with Paradise Craft Distributors, a division of Fine Properties, which is Paradise. I'm mixing things up. Paradise Craft Distributors is the exclusive distributor of Party across the state of Florida. So talk to the beverage staff, talk to the golf staff, and get yourself set up with some Party. If golf real estate is in your plans, the Golf Real Estate Pros of Gene Walsh, Vince Visicaro, and Samantha Walsh from suncoastdreams.com, a division of Fine Properties in the greater Sarasota area. They can get you all taken care of with that. And if all that golf has got you tired and everything, go to BioLit Spa in downtown Sarasota, and they'll help you on the road to recovery. All right. And one more thing. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, then do that. That helps with the algorithms, and also tell a friend about it. John, welcome back. I enjoyed part 1 of our interview with you with your book, The Last Amateur, My Golf and Life, Jay Sigel. I'm definitely fascinated by him. We left off where he put his hand through the glass at Wake Forest and then had the long recovery and just went on to play absolutely phenomenal golf. And it culminated with a career on the senior PGA Tour in which he won 8 times, $9 million in earnings. But influential people in his life, just prominent names in Jay's connection to them. Why don't we start with Jack Nicklaus? What was his relationship with Jack?
It's interesting. I never really talked to Jay about the genesis of their relationship, but I think it was just a case of mutual respect. In some ways, Jay, I would say, emulated Jack. Just a supreme gentleman in every way in the game, always trying to live up to the highest standards, playing at the highest level, enormous respect, recipients of the Bob Jones Award for, the impact and on the game. So I just think that even if it wasn't a closeness from a distance, it was such that when Jay decided that it was time to seriously think, this is at the age of about 48, that what do I do for my, what do I do in life next? He decided to see if Jack would help him with a decision. And he went and he actually spent 2 days with Jack. They played golf together. He spent time with Barbara. They definitely developed a closeness. I mean, while we were doing the book, I can remember one day I think it was Jay's birthday, November 13th, when Jack showed up with a photo with another friend, with them wishing Jay a happy birthday that day. And but anyway, Jack, gave him a lot of good advice. He started the advice by saying, whatever you do, it won't be a bad decision, because if you do go for the senior tour, I think you'll be happy. I think you'll feel good about that. But also, if you stay with the amateur game, that's what you love. So that was kind of the relationship. Jack, I guess, in some ways, almost like a father figure, trying to guide Jay. One of the things he said specifically to Jay that was that he should keep his insurance practice. Because Jay told him he had good people in the insurance business. Jay was thinking he just, started playing 30 times a year, which was more than double what he was playing at the amateur level, that he just couldn't do two things. And Jack said, no, I think you can. And Jay really was extremely capable of kind of compartmentalizing anyway. And so that was that decision he made was based on advice he received from Jack.
See, that is so compelling. And I saw an interview with Jay years ago in which it must have been the same conversation that you're talking about. And there were other things that came out, and I want to get your take on it. Eventually, they played a lot of golf together, and the interviewer said, was there some money involved? And Jay said, yes, there was. And he's like, and where is that money right now? And Jay had this big grin on his face. He said, yes, I have some of Jack's money. And he was so proud of himself, as would anybody, if you got in Jack Nicklaus's pocket. But speaking of money and Jack's advice on keeping the insurance, I also saw another interview in the past in which the interviewer said, if not for the accident, wouldn't you like to have turned pro because you could have made so much more money, suggesting that there was more money to be made golf than in insurance. And Jay had this other grin on his face, and he said, I'm not sure that I would have made more money playing golf than I have in my business. So how successful was he with the insurance?
Well, I think he was quite successful. I mean, I interviewed several that he worked with. I interviewed clients, but I don't think I never took the step of in some way trying to quantify it. But what I found that was interesting is Jay loved the business. Jay loved being successful in the insurance business and running that business, working with the people. It was very fulfilling for him. It was almost as if he had a second golf career, only it was insurance. Mm-hmm. That really struck me. I mean, he was the same way about his family, about, Betty and the girls. They were all high priorities. Ken Blanchard, who writes the foreword of the book, the famous 2-Minute Manager. That's a funny story, by the way, how they met and knew each other, but they remained lifelong friends. And Ken, as I say, wrote that. And in there, he said, Jay always had, that the priority in his life, or the three priorities in his life, were family, his business, and then golf. And he said in that order. And I think that kind of balance really helped him a lot. I think, he could win a major amateur or a championship, say we're talking the Northeast Amateur, or he could be in the lead. And he'd go back to whoever he was staying with, and he'd get on the phone and talk to clients for a couple hours that night. That was not unusual. So he would weave his business all the time into, his golf life. And I actually think that it kind of helped in a way to be a distraction. I mean, he told me the story of going to the Masters. He had a little bit of an entourage. They sometimes rented two homes in Augusta. friends, clients, others that would come with him. And, he said it was great because it created a distraction for him. You didn't just think about the Masters all the time and be focused on every little detail of what you did right or what you did wrong. One of his strengths, tremendous strengths, I think, as a player, as a person, was the ability to almost immediately forget the bad shots. Whatever went wrong, he just had a mental ability to say, okay, that's behind me. What's in front of me? And he did that with, phenomenal success all his life. In fact, at one time, I was doing some research on after he had the comeback at Wake Forest, and I think it was the next time he played in the ACC championship, which was at Pinehurst number 2, and he went out and he birdied the first hole. And in a way, he's defending champion because he missed the following year. And he birdies the first hole, and he then proceeded to go triple bogey, double bogey, bogey. It may have been a little bit later in the round, but it was a very un-Jay-like blow up. And I asked him about it, because we were working on that part of the book. And I said, so what was your reaction to that? He goes, I don't remember that at all. I said, you blew up in the ACC championship. I mean, Jay Sigel makes triple bogey, double bogey. You have no memory of that at all? He said, none whatsoever. He says, I just always put those things behind me. I didn't think about them again.
Well, I think that had something to do with his success and also his. You mentioned in part one the intimidation factor, and I wonder if we could drill down a little bit deeper on that. The one time that I played golf with him, it was competitive for me because it was a junior golf tournament. He was one of the sponsors. He was at the peak of his game. He was just removed from his U.S. amateur titles and everything. And I just remember seeing he had huge feet. His feet were like enormous. They maybe 13 or 14, but I'm like, God, this guy has big feet. And he could really hit it. But I thought he would talk more than he did. And I realized, man, he's just really into his golf. Now, the juniors, we were competing, but he was one of the sponsors because it was an insurance youth classic and Jay was an insurance guy. But I think am I capturing the person that I think I know with the person that you found out by dealing with him, writing the book with him, and then others who knew him, just his demeanor on the golf course?
His demeanor on the golf course was pretty famous. He was described in so many different ways. Probably the most common term I heard was stoic. Writers wrote about it all the time. And it did spill over into this idea that he was intimidating. And a lot of folks would talk about that. He certainly wasn't talkative. He just focused on his own business. He had this mentality that, that he didn't want to talk. He just wanted to, show what he could do with his game. And that's what he did. Interesting, when he played Scott Hoke in the finals of the British Amateur, it's like you'd say, okay, well, people wouldn't warm up to Jay because he was so quiet. He didn't engage with people. He was standoffish. It was just who he was. But, the Brits seemed to love that, particularly as compared to Scott Hoke, who wore all his emotions on his sleeve and was just going all over the place. So you ended up with the whole crowd, in favor and thrilled that Jay's, beating Scott Hoke and getting down on Scott Hoke the whole time. Jay and Scott seemed to have a really good relationship. In fact, they were partners in the Walker Cup just before that. And Jay's golf clubs did not arrive. And he actually played out of Scott Hoke's bag for a day or two before they went on and became partners when his clubs finally showed up. But no, that was who he was. He joked when he was on the senior tour a little bit about loosening up, and I really do think he did. And I think when you talk to people that he engaged with later in his career, he almost really sounds more like one of the boys. I don't know how much he went to the bar afterwards for a drink, but they would all talk about him that way. Fun to be around, subtle sense of humor, very warm person, good guy, caring about important things in life, their families, and so he had that side to him. But I think when he was competing, I think part of it was an outgrowth of the fact that he had so much trouble with match play early in his career. I mean, he lost 2 Philadelphia juniors in the finals. He could never seem to get over the hump in the Philadelphia amateur. It was very frustrating to him. And he couldn't get anywhere in the U.S. amateur. I think Brookline was like his 16th U.S. amateur. I don't think he had ever been past the 3rd round up to that point in time. Then after that, he was rarely not a quarterfinalist. He became a quarterfinalist 8 times. I mean, how many people have ever done that in history? Maybe Chick Evans and Jones and Francis we met. So he probably became the best match play player in golf for almost a decade. But before that, and he actually had a kind of interesting story about it. There was a great amateur won the British at that time who won the British 2 years in a row and played on the British Walker Cup team, Peter McAvoy. And I don't know if you remember that name, but he was a great match play golfer. And when Jay and Scott were playing, he and his partner at Muirfield, he actually brought up to Jay on the course, "Hey, Jay, how come you don't like match play? I always hear you don't like match play." And Jay gave him kind of his standard answer, which was he thought it brought luck into the picture too much. And, if you had a bad hole, there wasn't as much recovery time. He had several, different ways that he explained that he didn't like it, but he used the expression a couple times. He considered it like Russian roulette. But McAvoy said, "I don't know why you feel that way. I think match play is easier." And he said, "Well, why do you think it's easier?" And he said, "Well, I just think it's an easier game." He said, "The way I approach it all the time, I approach it that every hole is sudden death. And if I win that hole, the next hole is sudden death again. I got to win that hole too." And that was literally the week before Jay played Scott Hoke. He had never won a national championship or a championship at that level. And the next week, he wins the British Amateur, wins the amateur championship.
Sometimes it takes a conversation.
There was no stopping him after that. None.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can say that again. What's the story with you and golf shoes, NJ?
I do tell that in the introduction. I do. So it's Jay's voice with a whole series of inserts from Jay's peers, caddies, and others throughout the book. But I do write both the intro and the epilogue. And I do tell the story in the intro just to give a little bit of personal touch to it, that my brother and I, when I was in college, he actually had a car. I had nothing, but we were both working for the same company that summer. It was one of those summer jobs to try to, money to go back to school. And he entered us somehow or other, got us an invitation into the Chester Valley Invitational. And you took a look at that field at this thing when we got up there. And I mean, it was the who's who of Philadelphia golf. Now, I mean, I was a decent, University of Delaware golfer, and probably a 1 or 2 handicap at the time. But, you're looking at this field with Lou Riggs, Gordon Brewer, Jay Sigel. I mean, this is like the all-star team at Philadelphia Golf. And my brother and I actually played really, really well. We were in second going into the last round, 54-hole medal. And Jay and his partner were always actually behind us, chasing us. And they caught us in a tie for third place. So we finished, I think, 4 back of Gordon Brewer's team and 1 behind the second place. And then it was us. And they had, as the prize for third place, was 2 pairs of golf shoes for the 2 contestants. And I mean, we didn't have 2 sticks to rub together. I played with hand-me-down clubs and everything else, and shoes were a mess. And thought, wow, look at those brand new golf shoes, brand new pair of FootJoys. I'd kill for these things. And they announce, since we're tied with Jay, they announced that they want to have a playoff. I honestly think that they just wanted to see Jay play the first hole. Of course, that was not good news to Kurt and I. Kurt and I went, oh, my God, how are we going to beat Jay Sigel? Even though in theory, we tied him for 3 rounds with his partner. You figure he's going to turn it on in on a playoff hole. And he was sitting like a table away from him. I had never met him in my life, just been reading about him all my life. And he gets up, walks over to her table, and he goes, "You 2 guys, the Riley brothers?" We looked up at him, and, there's the great Jay Sigel. And we said, yeah, we are. He said, we're thinking we're going to concede and just give you guys the shoes, if that's okay with you. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. We're high-fiving each other all the way back to Wilmington in the car. We were so excited. So that was my original I think that was the only time in Jay's life he ever conceded a match, and it was to me.
That's and you held on to those shoes for about 10 years, and probably every time you look down at them, you're like, thanks,
I wore
Jay.
those shoes.
Thank you, Jay.
For college.
Yeah.
And after, right through the Army, too.
John Riley is our guest here on Party Time, My Golf Story, brought to you by Party Drinks, the golf real estate pros at suncoastdreams.com, a division of fine properties in the greater Sarasota area. Gene Walsh, Samantha Walsh, and Vince Vizzacaro, and Violet Spa in downtown Sarasota. If we could, like, you had to reach out to a lot. Well, I'll get to Billy Andrade in a second because I love Billy. Everything he says is funny, especially when he makes fun of his boy Brad Faxon, calls him names, which I won't use that language here. But Billy can be a loose cannon, as you know. But Jay passed away during the writing of the book. What was that like, and how were you able to continue without him?
Yeah, I mean, when I first met with Jay and Betty, and they said they wanted to do the book and said they wanted to do it in the first person, right away I'm thinking to myself, by the way, kind of a funny story. So they're sitting there, and I had co-authored a book with my friend Kevin Riley, who played for the Philadelphia Eagles, and so it was all written in the first person, and pretty inspiring tale. Kevin's story, how he lost his arm and shoulder, lost his football career. And Jay and Betty had the book sitting in front of them. And Jay said, this is the book we want. This is the book we want. And I said, really? I said, you want to do this in the first person? This is going to be an autobiography? Because I'm thinking to myself, here's a guy that's just been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He's 80 years old, almost 81. How's this going to work out? And anyway, he said, yeah, that's the way we want to do it. And I said, good. I said, all my life I wanted to be Jay Sigel, and now I get a chance to be Jay Sigel. So, and write in the first person. Mm-hmm. So we got together right away. We started doing it by, Zoom. He was undergoing chemotherapy treatment. I didn't want to bring any germs into the picture, and we just agreed that would be the best way to do it. It was a bit of a challenge because Jay does not like any kind of technology. In fact, all the notes he had ever made for his whole career were all handwritten. I didn't have no typed documents. In fact, I had to have my daughter type everything so I could even understand it. It's basically what he created a whole outline of his life and his career, which was great. So, that was how it started. And we did interviews like 2-3 for as much as 2 hours if he felt well enough a week. that went on almost till so we started in October. That went on almost till Christmas time. And I said, Jay, I got to get started writing. I want you to provide feedback on everything I'm writing. Got started writing. I started sending him chapters. He'd make, little edits or notes, and we'd talk about them. And we went through basically half the book, 16 chapters. The last chapter I completed while he was still living was the U.S. Amateur. That was a good piece, really interesting part of the book for one reason, because I was able to work with his caddy on it, a guy by the name of Steve Davenport, who's now a financial advisor. He was 19 at the time. And Steve was, he was really outstanding. He remembered, tremendous detail that Jay and I never really got deep into. So, and then of course Jay passed away. It was pretty emotional, really. We had really grown close, very close in that 7 months. I had known him before, but now all of a sudden I'm talking to him every day. I had days where I had 12 calls from him, looking at my phone. Now, typical Jay, about half of them were pocket dials. And I said, did you call me? No. I just, I just rolled over on my phone again. Just very, very intense for that whole period of time. It took a while to regroup. Actually thought about maybe kind of like just telling the reader Jay died at this point, and I had to switch over to the third person for the rest of the book. But I had all the story and I had his voice. We had done all the interviews. We'd recorded all of them. I said, no, I'm just going to try to stay the course on this. It just was a little more tedious. I had to constantly fact check things before I could send it to Jay and say, is this right? He'd correct this or that. But now I couldn't do that. So that made the interviews even more important. Hey, you were playing with Jay. You were his partner. What happened? Here's what he told me. How did that look to you? Or even with Fred Ridley at Peachtree. Jay went to his grave feeling he was responsible for the first loss by a Walker Cup team, U.S. Walker Cup team on U.S. soil because of what happened at Peachtree. And, Fred Ridley and I spoke about that at length, and I'm sure he's going to be talking about it next week at the book kickoff.
Mm-hmm. Billy Andrade, how did you reach out to him, and what was his reaction? And I'm sure there was some colorful language involved in your discussion. So why don't you take it from there?
Billy was a great interview. I had the opportunity to meet Billy years ago. I had booked Peter Jacobson to play in a charity golf tournament I was running, and Peter suddenly lost his brother in the days before the golf tournament and couldn't come out from the West Coast. And the agent sent two replacements, as I recall. One of them was a guy with curly hair by the name of Bobby Clampett, and the other one was Billy Andrade. Mm-hmm. And needless to say, they were not only both great, but they both, I never did interview Clampett, but there's a lot of Clampett in the book because Jay and Clampett, had a lot of contact at various championships over the years. With Jay winning one, Clampett winning one. Of course, Clampett, he's just a kid, and Jay by then is 40 years old. But and Jay's a legend. But Andrade was a partner of Jay's in the Walker Cup at Sunningdale in England, and certainly had developed a big reputation. He had actually won the North and South and beat Jay at that time on the last hole on his way to the North and South. But even still, Billy's kind of a kid still at that time, and Jay is Jay. He's like the biggest thing in amateur golf. Mm-hmm. So I was talking, I guess, to a teammate And I asked him if he had Billy's number. He gave me Billy's number. I left him a text. And the next day I get a call from Billy and answer the phone. Billy says, John, you the guy that wanted to talk to me about the Bobby Jones of my generation? And I said, well, yeah, I guess you could say that. A lot of people have said that. He said, well, what do you want to know? So we got into it a little bit. I think actually he was in an airport on his way to play golf in Mexico. And he told me the story, which I love, which is in the book, in both parts, in Jay's voice as he's playing at Sunningdale, and Fred Ridley is the captain. And Ridley comes to Billy and he says, Billy, I'm going to pair you with Jay. And Billy's like, wow, I'm going to play with Jay in my first Walker Cup, and Jay's the man. And he says, then Jay comes up to me and Jay says, Billy, what do you want to do? You want to hit first off the tee or you want to hit from the fairway? And he says, man, I don't want to hit first. He says, my first Walker Cup. I'm a nervous wreck. I said, oh, no, Jay, I'll just hit from the fairway. That'll be fine with me. And he said, of course, Jay steps up in front of the whole crowd and everything, and he just rips it like 290 down the middle. It's a relatively short par 5. And, like no problem for Jay. So we start heading out to the golf ball. And the next thing I know, like a couple of carts start following us, loaded with television equipment, television. I've never hit a shot on television before. He said, oh, my God, I thought I was nervous about the idea of hitting from the first tee. Now they're following me out to the second shot. So he says, we get out there, and he said, all I got left really is a 5-iron. And he says, the pin is tucked way to the left behind the bunker. And he says, so I pull a 5-iron, and I'm getting ready to hit. He said, and Jay moseys over to me and kind of leans up close, and he goes, Billy, nothing fancy here, middle of the green. And Billy goes, it was like the voice of God. He goes, like,
I got to tell you a story about that. The voice, yes, because Jay had a very deep voice. So I mentioned I played in a junior golf tournament with him, and the other junior golfer in the group was a young man named Tony from the city, and he wasn't very competitive. He was a nice kid. He had a nice game, but he was not really going to compete for the title. And we were playing a short par 3 at North Hills Country Club, and it had a very the greens are super fast there, always have been. And Tony hit the ball above the hole. And that was the mistake. You could not hit the ball above the hole, because if you didn't make the putt, it could go off the green. Tony ended up 7-putting, and he didn't hit a bad putt. All right. I'm standing next to Jay right off the green, and we're watching it unfold. And I'm just kind of looking at him. He's looking at me, and it's clear that the kid is in distress, and somebody has to say something. And I'm thinking, well, I'm 17. You're a grown man. You got to say something. So Jay goes, Tony holds out. He's walking off the green. I mean, he looked like he needed a hug. And Jay goes, well, Tony, that's too bad, but that's golf. and John, he would have been fine leaving it at that. He said just enough. But then Jay went on. He said, but you know something? That won't be the last time you do that. And I'm thinking, no, Jay, that's a 4-putt under pressure, a 5-putt. Yeah, that's going to happen. A 7-putt, that's once in a lifetime. But it was just like Billy Andre said, the voice of God. and then he got a little in the rough with, like, the suffix that he put on the end of it. Like, I'll never forget it.
Billy said the rest of the story is, he said, I'm so like pumped up. He says, I immediately yank it left, and it's straight at the flag, not middle of the green like Jay instructed me. He said, but it flies the bunker and stops about a foot from the hole, or just a couple of feet from the hole. He said, so Jay just walks up, taps it in for eagle. We're one up and go on to win the match.
That's a great story. John, listen, I really enjoyed the conversation with you. 2 parts. In fact, the last time I think we talked, we did 2 parts because I know I'm getting good stuff and you just keep adding to it and adding to it and adding to it. Can't wait for the book to come out, and let's reconnect after the book launch and Fred Ridley's speech and everybody else at Aronimink. Sound like a good idea to you?
Sounds like fun. We'll do it.
All right. Now, where can I've been scrolling it across the screen throughout the conversation. Where can people find the book?
Yes. Right now, we're selling it off the website, siegelgolfbook.com, and you can see it there on your screen. Obviously, if you can make it to Aronimink for your Philadelphia audience, or within, I guess, a couple hours of Philadelphia, because we got people coming in from all over, in addition to Fred Ridley, who's coming from down your way. Mm-hmm. So we, we'll be... The ticket to the event gets you one limited edition hardback signed book. And if you like, you can pick up other copies, or people can show up there and buy other copies. So that's the one other thing in the short term where you'll be able to buy a book will be at Aronimink that day. I think a couple of clubs, maybe Aronimink, I'm not sure yet, but Delray down in Florida and other spots will probably have the book available. We'll have some bookstores with it and other places. So, but mainly for now, the website. Later on, we'll put it on Amazon. But for right now, just take it off the website.
SiegelGolfBook.com. Wish you nothing but success there. I can't wait to take a deeper dive into it. And for everybody else that loves golf and wants like the full detail, as if John didn't give it to you in the 2 parts here, it's all in the book. Just a fascinating person. He really was the next coming of Jack Nicklaus, or the reincarnation of Bobby Jones. Jay Sigel, My Life in Golf, the Jay Sigel autobiography. The Last Amateur, My Life in Golf, the Jay Sigel autobiography written by John Riley. John, thanks so much. As we wrap things up, big thanks to our title sponsor, Party Drinks. If you're looking for a drink alternative on the golf course, try a Party. If you're looking for golf real estate, good time to buy in the greater Sarasota area. Gene Walsh, Samantha Walsh, and Vince Visicaro from suncoastdreams.com got you covered. A division of fine properties. And if you're tired of all that golfing, you need to unwind and relax, you go to BioLit Spa in downtown Sarasota. For John Riley, I'm Kevin Walsh. We'll see you again next time on Party Time, My Golf Story.
See you, Kevin.
You've been listening to It's Party Time, My Golf Story, brought to you by Party Drinks. Classically designed golf drinks for golfers by golfers, and the golf real estate pros Gene Walsh and Vince Visicaro. For your Southwest Florida real estate needs, check them out at suncoastdreams.com or call 941-220-4000.